Hey yo, what's up guys, it's DPX. Welcome back to the top 110 Hidden Gems. Now if you haven't watched part 1, which is the bottom 5, which is 110 to 86, go do so. As well as also watching the video that was before that about the rules and stuff. And you'll be up to date here. I don't really want to explain stuff since we're getting into a lot today. So, let's get started, but before we do that, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, and leave a comment, and you'll be a loyal subscriber. Bank Panic is one of 2 arcade games on this list, and this one is really good. Bank Panic is a very cool game as it sort of reminds me of Wild Gunman or Hogan's Alley, as you're shooting random people who walk inside. No, they're not random people, they're like the bad guys. You gotta shoot like the right person as well. It's pretty cool. This game actually goes for almost $400 on eBay, but that's because I'm talking about the arcade version, so of course it's gonna go for high prices. Plus, there are just some better games on this list. But if you have an arcade emulator, do try this game out. It's really good. So in the bottom 25, my buddy Slash mentioned Tiny Toons. And I think he mentioned that you'll hear the name again. At least I told him to. And if he didn't tell you, Tiny Toons is a game you'll hear later on. And you'll hear it now with Tiny Toons Acme All-Stars. Acme All-Stars is a game where you make teams of the characters from Tiny Toons and play soccer or basketball. It's really cool. You can actually customize your teams. You can pick certain characters and you create your own teams, which is really cool. I don't know why, I just found that very cool. It's a lot of fun and deserves more attention, but believe it or not, this still isn't the last time you'll hear Tiny Toons on this list.
IXE summon! Kneel before number 83! Galaxy Queen!
Again, the SNES was when licensed games started to get released by other publishers that weren't LJN. I say again, because Slash mentioned that earlier. That's bottom 25. An example of one of those games would be The Mask for the Super Nintendo. The Mask seems to stick with the humor and themes of the movie, as you have stuff like boxing gloves as an attack, as well as the weird enemies that you fight. It also feels really smooth for the Super Nintendo, and the music is also awesome, and the sound is great too. They just stick out. There just really isn't that much to say about this game, which is why it doesn't place too high. But it's pretty fun. Give it a go.
What did we do? Well, we stole the Times Square Jumbotron!
Okay, I'm not only gonna kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I'm gonna kill 3 birds with 1 stone. With the Adventures of Lolo Trilogy, since they're all pretty similar, but all pretty solid. The 3 are sort of like platformers, but also in RPGs. Actually, I wrote that down, but they're not like that at all. They're overhead, top-down adventure games. Sort of like Zelda. But you also move boxes around to trap enemies and stuff. It's pretty cool. They're definitely interesting games. They're not higher because the first one has been re-released a lot before, like on the Nintendo Switch Online. And if you know the first one, I'm sure you'll be able to find out the second and third one. However, this trilogy is still a lot of fun and deserves more attention. Hitman 2016 is one of the newer games on the list and to be featured in an episode, but still has time to get popular, which is why it's not quite at a higher spot, but it is a hidden gem nonetheless. Hitman is a third-person shooter stealth game hybrid where you have certain missions that you have to complete. Simple, yeah. The graphics are really nice. The voice acting in particular is also really cool. Really good. You have certain weapons too that you're allowed to use. There are even parts of the game where you disguise yourself as other people to get onto, stuff that you wouldn't usually be allowed to get on. The only thing that is holding this game back from being higher, other than what I mentioned earlier, is that Hitman is an episodic game. So this isn't all one complete package.
UFC 78 validation.
You like mechas? Mechs? Whatever you like to call them? Well, if you do, Metal Warriors on the Super Nintendo is the game for you. Metal Warriors is sort of like a platformer mixed with a shooter. It can be slow due to the fact that you're in a mecha, but it speeds up with the flying mechanics, and it's really cool. It didn't really catch on. I wasn't really alive when it came out, but I could probably guess it's because it seems generic. I mean, the name Metal Warriors doesn't really stick out. I really actually held off on this one for quite a while because it just didn't seem interesting to me, and then I saw the game, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, this game is awesome. Anyways, it's not as generic as it sounds or may seem. It is really good, and you should try it.
Hello, and welcome to the 77th Annual Golden Globe Awards.
Look, name a license. Like a movie, a show, a book, anything that's not a video game. It probably has a Lego version. However, one underrated Lego game is one that's not really based off of anything. It's just a Lego game called Lego Battles. Lego Battles is a strategic RPG. It's almost like Clash of Clans in a way, but it's, actually good and worthy of being on a console. Console as in a DS, not on your phone. It's worth noting that this isn't the only game with the name Lego Battles, as there is also Lego Ninjago Battles, which is very similar, but this makes the list.
Take me home, country road.
In Vault 76, our future begins.
It's now time for the first game I've ever done in an episode of Hidden Gemz, and that is a little game known as Cheeky Boys. This is one game from Capcom on the Sega Genesis, while Capcom were buddy-buddy with Nintendo, so this is somewhat of a rare occasion, and probably didn't help it too much, because many people knew Capcom for being on Nintendo. Cheeky Boys, also known as the Mega Twins in other regions, is a platformer where you play as a sword-wielding kid attacking enemies, and it's pretty fun. It's just a really fun game that is worth a swing. Get it? Because you have a sword, so you gotta swing. Whatever. Okay, now for the next 5, my boy PatLuigi is gonna be covering them. So, take it away.
Yes, honestly, maybe 75% of the time, I throw first. I'm at her way before she's at me.
When you hear the name Zombies Ate My Neighbors, you think of a kid's game rather than a gory zombie game, but it happens to be the latter. Stupid name aside though, Zombies Ate My Neighbors is an incredibly fun game! It's kind of a shoot 'em up or shmup, but not in the way like Gradius or the aforementioned Solar Striker or Gun NAC. But it's a zombie shooter and it's a lot of fun. It's not higher due to the popularity it has received over the years though, but do check this game out.
Look at all the stars you have. I'll never be that good.
Oh, now, Patrick, I'm just like everyone else, no matter how many stars I have.
74!
Who said that?
Nintendo has a lot of iconic franchises, but a lot they haven't touched more than one. One example of that would be Mania. Mania is a Game Boy game that is really fun where you do stuff like move boxes to trap enemies and attack enemies. It's really fun, and seems even Nintendo has forgotten about Mole Mania because they almost never even mentioned this game, but do give it a go!
Did I lie?
We get it. 73 is the Chuck Norris of numbers.
Chuck Norris wishes.
In the bottom 25, DPX mentioned Goemon's Great Adventure, and he also said that there will be more games from that series. Well, here is The Legend of the Mystical Ninja for the SNES. While the other two games from this series on the list are platformers, Legend of the Mystical Ninja is a top-down overhead adventure game similar to Zelda. It's a lot of fun and shows Konami's good days before they focused on pachinko machines. It's time to cover a game on the PSP! So let's talk about Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins. Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins is pretty much of a remake of the NES game Ghosts and Goblins, which is probably most known for the grueling difficulty. Well, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins keeps it that difficulty, giving a good enough challenge to the player. It's definitely a really good remake that nobody talks about, but really should! Now it's time for the game in the 100th episode of Hidden Gemz, and it's a Garfield's game. But it's really good! Garfield Got in the Act is a solid platformer with some great music, and the humor is in line with the Garfield Show. It unfortunately didn't get popular because it was exclusive to the Sega channel, something you'll hear again, where it gave you downloadable gaming, but it's obviously not around anymore. Unlike the rest of the Sega channel victims though, this game has actually been re-released, but levels have been removed and lost to time. You should really check this one out though.
Good evening! Hello everyone, welcome to the 70th Primetime Emmy Awards.
While Garfield Caught in the Act is a game that is no longer available in its entirety anymore, you can still play certain parts of it. Poker Night at the Inventory is a game that you can't really play anymore at all, unless you already had it on Steam before it got delisted. Now this is a poker game with Heavy from Team Fortress 2, Max from Sam & Max, Strong Bad from... I forgot the game. And this dude. I don't know who he is either. Forgot. And it's developed and published by Telltale. Yes, that Telltale. That Telltale. This game is such a novelty, and more so due to the fact that it ain't even available anymore. It's a very fun poker game that, well, I'd say give it a shot, but unfortunately you kinda can't. Microsoft really struggled with console exclusives this generation, to the point where they've kinda in a way just given up. However, back on the 360, Doritos supported the 360, as well as a bunch of other companies, but I'm not kidding. Doritos, with Doritos Crash Course 1 and 2. And, by the way, aside from the Doritos branding on these, I have no idea how they were involved with these games, but doesn't matter. We'll be talking about the second one, as we'll get into the first one later on. Doritos Crash Course is a game where you have to run through a ton of obstacle courses. While the first one has more realistic settings, the sequel goes for more fantasy and focuses a lot more on online. It's a very fun and addicting game, and to be honest, when I was younger, and before I got like a Wii U and got Smash on there, and when I got sick of Brawl on the Wii, I might have played these two games more than any other at the time. The only reason it's not higher is because it requires an online subscription. But, yo, Microsoft, you think you can make Doritos Crash Course 3 for the Series X sometime soon?
But Philip, number 68?
Back to the Future, a fantastic film trilogy. Even though the third one sucked. Fight me! But when it comes to video games, Back to the Future is really hit or miss. Well, mostly miss. However, Super Back to the Future Part 2 is Hit. Super Back to the Future Part 2 is a platformer that stays in tune with the Back to the Future movies. I mean, it's got the right music, it's got the right backgrounds, the right characters. The heads look a bit weird, they're like much bigger for some reason. But it's cool as you get to play on a hoverboard for the whole game, and it actually helps with the physics of the game. It's really fun. But I do know why it's not popular. It's because it was only for the Super Famicom. And to be honest, I don't even think it was too popular in Japan either, but it doesn't deserve to go unnoticed.
So I got the Mustang back to my shop. It was in okay condition.
I'm sure you guys like Mario Kart, right? Then you'll love Konami Crazy Racers on the Game Boy Advance. That's crazy with a K, by the way. What is this, Mortal Kombat? I know you wanna look at this and say, oh, it's just a Mario Kart ripoff. And it does take heavy inspiration from Mario Kart, but it's still so much fun. There's a selection of Konami characters like Goemon from the Mystical Ninja games, which, yeah, keep mentioning on this list. The ship from Gradius, Gray Fox from Metal Gear Solid, and not Snake, Dracula from Castlevania, and not Simon, and more. I guess the reason this game wasn't too popular, one of them probably being because there's no Snake, Simon, Bomberman, or any, you know, hard hitter big names, or it's probably because it just looks like a Mario Kart ripoff. But don't let that fool you, as it might be very similar to Mario Kart, and there might not be too much to differentiate it from it, but that doesn't mean it's not fun.
The time has come. Execute Order 66.
In the bottom 25, I covered the first Wizards and Warriors. Well, now it's time for the sequel, Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2. The Iron Sword part really isn't necessary in the name. I really don't know why they couldn't just name it Wizards and Warriors 2, but whatever. A lot of people don't like this game. In a similar way, a lot of people don't like the first Wizards and Warriors. And yeah, there isn't a whole lot to say here either, but the music is awesome, it's not clunky, and the sprites look cooler than the first one. It plays very similar to the first Wizards and Warriors, but most of everything about Iron Sword is better, and you should play it. Plus, I don't know if I ever said this, but these two, as well as the third one, which we're getting into later on the list, were developed by Rare. Like that Rare. Yeah. Got your interest now, did I?
Build the overlay network. I exceed summon number 65, Jillbuster!
Are you tripping? No? Well, we got Trip World. Despite the fact that I just mentioned tripping as a segue into this game, Trip World has nothing to do with that, as it's a platformer that feels like Mega Man, Kirby, and Mario when looking at the level design, music, or just the overall feel of playing the game. Plus, you play as just this little adorable character. Come on, he's just irresistible. How can you hate him? Not gonna lie, Trip World might be one of the best games on the Game Boy, so it's definitely worth playing.
Introducing Super Smash Brothers, where all your favorite characters go toe-to-toe in one 4-player star-studded slam fest, only on Nintendo 64.
So earlier, PatLuigi talked about Ghosts and Goblins on the PSP, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins. One of the enemies from that game is Firebrand, a little red dragon who's an absolute douchebag in the games, because he's one reason that makes it very hard. And he got his own game series in fact, called Gargoyle's Quest, and changed names somewhere down the line, but I don't remember that. Despite it being called Gargoyle's Quest, it actually has nothing to do with the Gargoyles show or anything like that, but rather Firebrand. It's also really hard because, you know, it's a spin-off of Ghosts and Goblins. Specifically the Game Boy version, as this is the first one, is a lot of fun, as it's a platformer. It's pretty much if you were to take control of Firebrand in the Ghosts and Goblins games. It's a lot of fun, but it's not higher because there are 2 more games in this side series that are on the list. A bit better. A while ago in the series of Hidden Gems, when I spun the wheel and saw that I was gonna make an episode about Blades of Vengeance, I did not know a fucking thing about this game. After playing it though, I cannot deny how underrated and overlooked it is. Blades of Vengeance is a very interesting game, as it's almost like a beat-em-up game with platforming involved as well as RPG elements, so it's like a mix between the 3. It's also medieval themed, which I really like. It's such a unique game, for the time at least, but nobody played it. That's gotta change. Play this game. Fires are dangerous. A lot of kids when they're young say they want to be a firefighter when they grow up. But they probably didn't know that they can already do that with Fireman on the Super Nintendo. Fireman is a fun game that isn't an epic crazy game that takes place in medieval times, a game that's crazy hard, a game that's a huge racing crossover. None of that. It's just a game where you play as a group of firemen trying to put out fires. Yet it's still so much fun. There's just a rush to all the fire putting out. Yeah. It's a safe yet fun enough game that you should definitely try out.
Thomas Jane. Barry Pepper.
Many people don't like the death and return of Superman, but I do. The Death and Return of Superman is a video game adaptation of the iconic comic book storyline, where Superman, well, you know, dies and returns. Spoiler if you somehow don't know. This is a beat-em-up game as Superman, which already sounds awesome, but you throw in the soundtrack and the great feel, and you have probably one of the most underrated superhero games ever. That was it for this part of Hidden Gems, the top 110 Hidden Gems. What do you guys think? Be sure to like this video, come subscribe. I'll be back with part 3 very soon. Bye bye, guys.